And talking about cultural context in IB, the four important components are author's biography and style, time period set, time period the text is written in, and then the author's reaction. We've already really talked about the time period that the novel is set in. So the novel Things Fall Apart is set in the 1890s in Africa. This is when imperialism is going along and the scramble for Africa. And then these arbitrary borders that don't really mean anything are created and largely ignored. We also talked about what else was kind of going on in the world between when the novel was set and when the novel was written, with our discussion of modernism. So there was industrialization, World War I, the economic boom, the Great Depression, World War II. Europe collapses, and there's a spread of nationalism. Through your own research, you guys should know about the author's biography. We haven't yet really talked on his style. And then that last thing we really have to explore when the novel is set. So in Africa in 1953, Nigeria is really going through this cultural change that is really similar to what's happening, not really similar, but that Chinua Achebe draws connections to with what happened in his novels. So in 1953, there's this strong nationalist movement from the Nigerians. So this national movement is really the belief in a shared history, language, culture, values, religion, etc. with an imagined group of people. So this is the first time the African or the Black Nigerians begin to assert that they have a Nigerian identity. This was largely due to the fact that it took them 30 plus years to form this identity. So it took them 30 plus years to get a common language, which was English. Before they had spoken the language of their tribe or their language of their clan, and not necessarily a shared language. They also get shared values after that 30 plus years of being, Christian, of being indoctrinated into the Western values. And then they have a shared idea that they are similar. Before before Western imperialism came into the country, if someone, from the Umafima village saw someone from the Bantu village, they wouldn't have thought they looked similar. Only in comparison, really, to the white man do they think they look similar. So after 30 years, unintended consequences of colonialism is that this shared identity between Nigerians really develops. Also, over 30 plus years, that's a generation and a half of being in school. A generation and a half of the Nigerians have gone through the school system. So they've went through the school system. They've, worked in the governments. They've really started to see how imperialism works. And then finally, in the 1950s, that's following World War II, where there was this huge nationalist push in Germany, in France, in other countries, and the Nigerians really see that and see what can result from it. Additionally, following World War II, the Britain's grasp over their, Britain's grasp in Africa is lessened because they have to worry much more about building up their countries again, because they were completely destroyed following World War II. So they have less money, less time, less resources to spend in their colonies. So the time is really ripe for Chinua Achebe, for the Nigerians to go through this nationalist movement and try to gain their independence. In 1953, Nigeria hasn't gained independence, but they're definitely talking about it. So some questions I would like you to consider are, I kind of already addressed the two, but you can come talk to me about them if you don't understand. But Things Fall Apart was written in 1953 and published in 1959. During this time of cultural change in Nigeria, when a lot was going on, why would Achebe choose to write about the fall of the Igbo culture, in the last century, when he could have been writing about nationalism? What do you guys think? What was his message with this book? What was he trying to say? We explore this so that we can talk about context in the novel. Where do you see your knowledge of the author, of the time period it was written in, of the time period set, really make an impact on the meaning of the novel? For you, where does it change your understanding? How can you read it and analyze for context? And then finally, how does that compare to your own contextual understanding of the world? So like what other cultures have experienced that? Where have you experienced it in your life? What do you read the book and think about? That's what the IOC and really these other DP assessments are going to ask us to ask. If you have any other questions or need further depth in any of these topics, please come talk to me. This was just a very brief summary of what was discussed on Friday, February 1st.